hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma 231 here, back in day, talk about Oshi no Ko, chapter number 161. This chapter is titled Future. And I don't think I'm ever going to beat a record I have whenever it comes to talking about Oshi no Ko. And the record I'm specifically talking about is whenever chapter number 122 came out. Of course, that was the chapter, or it may have been 121. I honestly do not remember my numbers totally exactly. But the whole idea of that chapter is that's when we learned that, of course, Ruby and Aqua learned that each other were Serena and Goro, right? And I was at home whenever on that Wednesday when that chapter was released. And I read the chapter whenever it came out. And the second after that I finished reading the chapter, I opened up my computer, went to Manga Plus, and got everything ready so I could talk about that chapter right after I finished it. And I honestly think I probably talked about that chapter. I probably started the video at, I think it was probably 11:10 or so. And by that time the hour was over, I'd already finished editing the video, and the video had been uploaded. Now, that is not what's happening with this video. This video is actually being recorded about 45 minutes after the chapter has initially released. Because like I said, I don't think I'm ever going to beat that record, but I did come damn close today. Because like I said, today we're talking about Oshi no Ko, chapter number 161. And this chapter is absolutely insane. Of course, we've had a 2-week break since chapter number 160 came out, where we got a whole bunch of revelations about, okay, Hikaru is a master manipulator, and we got a bunch of these ideas. And of course, the ending idea was Aqua holding out a knife to Hikaru, saying like, hey, I want you to disappear now for the sake of Ruby's future. And this chapter builds off on that in such an interesting way. There's a small part of this chapter I'm not the biggest fan of, and it's something that comes near the beginning, but I'll talk about that relatively soon in the video. I should also mention that there are going to be timestamps for all of the different sections of this chapter down below, so if you want to hear my specific thoughts on sort of like Aqua's rough reflection on his sort of life, we'll go there and go look at that to see my opinions there. But this chapter is absolutely insane, and honestly, it should almost be illegal for Aka Asakasa and Mingo Yoriki, the, of course, author and artist duo of this series, to release a chapter this gas back-to-back. Of course, we did have to wait 2 weeks for this chapter, which was a really big deal, because I have a friend who I talk about Oshi no Ko with. He hasn't actually ever appeared on the channel, but after last week's chapter, I don't think I mentioned any of these theories in the video, because I'm pretty sure I talked to him about this Oshi no Ko chapter after I put last video out, but me and him pretty much thought of some theories. Like, me and him were going through, like, my going theory was to how Hikaru was actually going to walk into the knife himself and stab himself with it, and my friend Rylan's opinion was that Hikaru was going to fall off the cliff, right? And honestly, I think we sort of both came to a pretty good idea, and sort of both of our ideas sort of mixed together with, I figured that Aqua was not going to end up stabbing Hikaru, and as we will get to, he doesn't, and also that maybe they fall off the cliff. We're not going to get there yet, but maybe it happens. I guess at this point I should say massive spoilers for this chapter, but if you're watching this video, there's probably no reason for me to give you spoilers, right? But this is an absolutely gas chapter, and there's really, I just want to start talking about it because, like, of course, if I'm recording this video 45 minutes after this chapter came out, this means that this chapter is absolute gas, and I could not literally, like, I was in the library of my college taking some notes on some gravitational stuff and stuff for astronomy, and I'm sitting down there, and I'm like, oh yeah, Oshi no Ko Wednesday, and I open up Manga Plus, I read the chapter, and as soon as I did that, it was hard for me to finish up the, like, 7 more sentences of notes I needed to take to then get back here and start recording about Oshi no Ko. But what happened last time in Oshi no Ko, like I alluded to earlier, we got a whole chapter about how much of a manipulator Hikaru was, how he pretty much pressured both Nino and Ryosuke into doing various things that ended up killing many people. And at the very end of, or not the very end, but towards the end of the chapter, we learned some more stuff about, of course, we know that the dark Starringons are the eyes of liars, and we learned that the light Starringons are really the eyes that convey love to others. Of course, using Ruby as a prime example of being a great idol who is conveying her love to everybody in the audience. And as I said earlier, at the end of the chapter, we got Aqua holding out the knife to Hikaru, just saying, I want you to disappear now for the sake of Ruby's future. And as he says this, he has those light Starringons in his eyes. And we open up chapter number 161 with, there are currently some emergency videos out my window. I didn't want to have to shut my window, but I think I'm going to have to. So let me go to that real fast, and then I can talk about this gas chapter. All right, window is closed. So as I was getting ready to say, we open up this chapter on a textless page, as we pretty much just see the imagery of Hikaru, who is, of course, leaning against this railing of this area outlooking Japan's ocean, or the Pacific Ocean. Well, I guess there's probably that little peninsula like in between China and Japan. I do not know enough about Japan's landscape to be able to accurately say where this is, but Aqua is leaning on this railing, and the railing is up on the cliff that is overlooking the water, and he's still holding the phone in his hand, of course, where he is watching the B. Konohachi Glare X Sparkle final tour performance, of course, in Tokyo, Japan. And as this is happening, Aqua is holding out the knife, like very perpendicular, just pointing it at Hikaru. And we see that the way Hikaru is holding his phone, he is sort of holding it on the same level that Aqua is holding this knife. We see two small shots of these two characters' faces, as we see that Aqua has this very, very determined look on his face, as we can just see his light starting on is going, and Aqua is sort of, we understand that he has made up his resolve for what he is getting ready to do to Hikaru. And we then see this image of Hikaru's face, where that went down the wrong pipe. Oh gosh. But we see this image of Hikaru's face as the knife is almost right up in his face at this point. And we see that Hikaru's dark Sharingan pupils are super dilated. Like, they are so... I'm pretty sure dilated is when they become small. I also think there's a version of dilation whenever they become really big too, but whatever. Hikaru's pupils have shrunk massively, as you can tell that he is scared of what is getting ready to happen here. And the next page, we cut to the same but different scene. This was what I was sort of alluding to earlier when I said this wasn't my favorite part of this chapter, probably the one part that I didn't like to begin with. And that is whenever we cut out to the Sea of Japan here, where Crow Girl, or of course Tsukuyomi, is standing there, and we pretty much just see that she gives us a little bit of narration, as crows are sort of just swarming her as the moon in the night sky sort of illuminating the area. We see the Crow Girl pretty much goes like, Hikaru Kamaki. He was obsessed with the idea that killing those who could surpass Ai Hoshino would increase her significance, and use his charisma to spread his ideas to those around him. Hikaru, he has lost his former nobility and is now a broken soul who fulfills his desires by taking people's lives. So, pretty much, she also just says, like, hey, and for that reason, trying to kill Ruby Hoshino has become his destiny. And if so, maybe this very scene was preordained from the beginning. Now, the reason I don't really like this sequence here, I mean, it is like a very good, like, wrap-up, like, alright, yes, this is Hikaru's character. He is somebody who is, he was wrapped up with the love that Ai showed him and wanted to be with Ai forever. So what he did was to make Ai pretty much a bigger person and to make her out to be more of an idol, he killed other people that would eventually surpass Ai to make it so she would always be that ultimate idol. And for that reason, he wants to kill Ruby, her daughter, just so Ai is still held on that great pedestal of being the best idol, and he doesn't want Ruby, who we have seen is going to surpass that role, actually surpass it, right? And the whole idea where she says, if so, this scene was maybe preordained from the very beginning, I just don't really like whenever stories like this. Like, yes, we knew from the beginning of this series that whoever the killer was, the father of Aqua and Ruby, we knew that one day Aqua would probably be facing them down with a knife. Like, this isn't something brand new. It's just the way this idea is phrased. Overall, I think this is an amazing chapter. Like, this is the smallest possible nitpick I could just be, like, plucking out right here. But this is still a nitpick enough to where I see it and I'm like, I don't really know if I like that. And I do definitely think that Crow Girl's portrayal in this series has definitely been subpar the entire time. But this is just a moment that I'm not necessarily a major fan of. But with all of this happening, we cut back to the scene where, of course, Aqua and Hikaru are on this area, and Aqua has a knife pointed at Hikaru. As Hikaru, pretty much seeing what's happening, starts to make, of course, some of his manipulative remarks, as he's just like, your sister's future, eh? Well, she has no future but to wither and die. Her existence as a human isn't eternal. And hearing this, Aqua's like, oh, well, that's eternal coming from you. But Ruby's future isn't yours. And at this point, we see that Hikaru starts to disregard his phone, of course, where the concert is playing, and puts his focus solely on Aqua, as he pretty much just gestures his hand in a certain way, and he pretty much drops his phone straight onto the ground beneath him, right? And seeing all of this and understanding all that's going on here, Hikaru just gives Aqua one of these looks of hey, that's perfectly fine if that's what you're going to do. That's what makes Ai's life even more valuable. But is that really okay? It'd be easy to kill someone helpless like me. But what happens after that? Will your precious Ruby be able to reach the heights of idolhood as the sister of a murderer? And as Hikaru says this, he's drawn in a very interesting way in this image. Now, this isn't the interesting way that we saw him drawn last time, where he literally looked like a devil or demon incarnate, pretty much, with his dark Sharingans and everything. This is sort of an artistic style that we've seen in Oshi no Ko before, where he sort of has some wavy gray tones pretty much covering his body. It's a very unique art style that I've really only seen Mingo Yoriki use a few times, and maybe in a select few manga besides for that, but I honestly can't point out one of those manga right this second. But Hikaru brings up an amazingly good point here of how will Ruby be able to survive as a sister of a murderer. And hearing this, we see that Aqua has put the knife down by his side, and we see that while he still has a light Sharingan, oops, sorry about that noise there, we see that as Aqua still has this light Sharingan, he's got this sort of more monotone expression where you can tell that he's oh, yeah, that's right. But Hikaru continues as he just says hey, the symbol of your sister having a killer for a brother is probably the perfect toy for society. And he pretty much says what people would probably say about it, how can the family of a murderer work as an idol at ease? That's just wrong, right? Hypocrites who fake such disgust as a sense of justice will gather in droves and take away dignity and jobs. And as he pretty much just says all of this, he eventually comes to the point of the media and the public do not want the truth of the situation. And as he says this, he's just you've got to realize, Aqua, stabbing me with a knife won't solve anything. I mean, I know you're smart, so you already knew that, right? And he's and I know that you already have plenty of reasons to live yourself. And he's making your dreams come true, falling in love, hanging out with your friends, and returning the favors to your loved ones, and watching your sister pursue her idol dreams to the end. Am I wrong, Aqua? And as Hikaru is saying all of these manipulative words to Aqua, because of course, as we will read here, Hikaru doesn't want to die. I think that's obviously clear. I mean, I don't think anybody particularly wants to die. And what Hikaru is getting across here is just hey, you have got so much of a life in front of you, so you shouldn't stab me so you have a better life, sort of weaseling his way out of this idea of, yeah, I don't want you to kill me, so I'm telling you why you don't want to be locked up in jail, pretty much. And as Hikaru said all of these things, hey, making your dreams come true, we see the image of course, Ruby making her dreams come true, falling in love. We see, of course, Kana's face, because, yeah, that's sort of how this series works. Hanging out with friends, we see Mimcho, and it's just and watching your sister pursue her idol dreams to the end, we see the image of the phone of Biko Nahachi performing on the stage, because of course the phone has landed face up on the ground, so we can see the phone screen facing up, and we just see this image of the phone laying there. What's interesting here is we don't see Hikaru mention Akane or any role that Akane would fulfill at all. I guess she would be hanging out with friends, but I guess that Akasa and Mingo Yoriki wanted to focus on the three aspects of what the Become Nahachi girls mean to Aqua. But that is what it is. But as Hikaru asks Aqua, hey Aqua, am I wrong about any of that? Aqua is silent for a second, but eventually he speaks up, as he just goes, no, Hikaru, you're right. I have my own dreams. One day, I will become a surgeon, and it might also be good for me to respond to Kana Arima's feelings. I want to go to the beach with Taiki Himakawa again, and calling Miyako-san mom. And I also want to repay Akane for all of the kindness she has shown me, and build an equal relationship with her. As we see all of these images are sort of it's sort of in like the black screen that manga uses typically for like flashbacks, this black bordering of the panels. And we see all of these panels overlaid here as we just see these images of like Aqua calling Miyako mom, images of Taiki and Himikawa on the beach, Kana and Aqua together, and of course Akane and Aqua together too. And of course the book of the medical exam stuff that he's been reading over these past few chapters in his dream to become a surgeon once again, right? And as he says all of this, he ends on one final note, as he just says, "And I definitely want to see Ruby performing at the Dome." And hearing this, we see that Hikaru sort of has this very sly smile on his face, as he's thinking like, oh, yeah, look at that. I have just like sort of twisted this kid, manipulated him to where he doesn't want to kill me anymore, so I'm out of this scot-free. This is good, we can work for this. But at this point, Aqua just says, "But Hikaru," as we see Hikaru's face suddenly sinks as his smile almost turns to a frown, like turn that smile upside down. And we see that this almost happens to Hikaru here, as he hears Aqua just say these words. As Aqua just says, "I'll protect my sister's future, even if that means I have to throw it all away." As we see that Aqua has this very regretful look on his face in this moment, as his eyes are sort of like squinted down, and you can tell by his smile and everything that he knows that what he's about to do is going to be something that he will never be able to recover from. As Aqua just continues to Hikaru, "Hikaru, you are spoiling Ruby's future, so you will die here. Things will never go your way again." And Hikaru's like, "Hey, come on, man," as he sort of like puts up his hands in front of his body like, "Hey, are you even sane, Aqua?" And he's like, "Aqua, you gotta realize, if you do that, your sister will..." But he isn't even able to finish this before Aqua just says, "I'll kill you, Hikaru. But I won't let the media report her as the sister of a murderer." As he just says, "There's only one way that I can do that." As we suddenly cut over to the Glare X Sparkle Tokyo performance of Bikamachi, as we see, of course, Ruby, Mimcho, and Kana have all finished up their collective song that they were singing in the last chapter. And as they're sort of like taking a break here to like regain their breath and everything, we see all of a sudden that off in the distance, there is a star that twinkles in a very interesting way, as it's that six-pointed star almost that we see as in these characters' eyes. And we see this star in the distance twinkle a little bit, and we see that Ruby catches the sight of this star, and sort of just takes a look at it, very confused. And at this moment, we suddenly cut to black, and as soon as we cut to black, we cut to light again, as we see the knife that Aqua's holding before is now bloodied on the blade. We see that somebody has been stabbed with this knife. And as we turn the page, we see that Aqua has stabbed himself. We see that Aqua in his abdomen region, we see that there's a massive blood splatter as Aqua is suddenly bleeding out on his side, and the knife that is held in his hand is aimed towards his body. As Aqua is looking totally out of it. I mean, yeah, Aqua just stabbed himself. I totally understand why. And he looks at Hikaru and he just gives him a smug little smile. And Hikaru sees this and is now totally freaked out. As Aqua just continues on with his narration in a very shaky voice, he's just like, "Hikaru Kamaki, who was accustomed of committing a crime in his biopic, got into a fight with the scriptwriter of the film, and after stabbing, they both fell off a cliff to their deaths." As pretty much as Aqua says this, Hikaru realizes what's going on here, as Aqua walks up and grabs Hikaru by the collar of his suit and tie. As this happens, Aqua just repeats the words that Hikaru said earlier. Aqua says, "The media and the public do not want the truth." As Hikaru's like, hey, like, what are you doing here? Like, we do not need to do this. Nothing needs to happen here. But Aqua is just like, so we can trick them completely. As all of a sudden, still holding the knife, Aqua suddenly grabs Hikaru by the collar once again and suddenly jumps forward as he uses the leverage, and him and Hikaru start to go tumbling off the cliff over the railing into the sea below them. And Hikaru is like, stop this, hey, what are you doing? And at the very end of the chapter, Hikaru just says, I won't let this lie be exposed. And as he says this, that is where we end this chapter of Oshi no Ko. Like I said, I was sitting in the library and I was working on work for astronomy of like gravitational stuff and all of that. And I read this chapter, and after reading this absolute peak fiction, I don't understand how you could sit there and not just want to mull over everything this chapter has inside of it for a second. Of course, the really big images in this chapter are, of course, the whole idea of that, yes, Hikaru is still trying to manipulate Aqua into not wanting to kill him. But of course, Aqua is smart, so he's already thought about this and thought about how Ruby's future will be affected if he is labeled as a murderer, so he decides to stab himself and sort of twist the narrative. As I love the reuse of the word twice, of the media and the public do not want the truth. Of course, Hikaru saying that to Aqua, and the whole ideas of they don't want the truth, that of the brother being a murderer and the sister being an idol. And then Aqua twists that on him, saying that the media will never learn the truth of what happened here, because I am going to stab myself and make it look like you stabbed me, and then we both went off the cliff. It is a brilliant use of writing, of crafting this excellent narrative of finally solving the mystery. And as I alluded to earlier, me and my friend Rowan's predictions on this chapter, of course, my prediction, I did not think that Aqua was going to stab Hikaru with the knife, because of course, as I sort of thought, that would fuck up Ruby's future. And we see it doesn't happen here because Aqua stabs himself instead to make it look like Hikaru did it. Now, I was also thinking of the idea that maybe Hikaru would be willing to let go of his life and stab himself with the knife to sort of frame Aqua. But of course, we can now see through this chapter, and honestly hints in previous chapters, that Hikaru does not want to die whatsoever. But moving back into this, and then the idea that my friend Rowan had of that they were going to be going tumbling off the cliff, and that Hikaru would probably willingly jump himself off the cliff. We both thought that Hikaru probably had a lot less reservations on life than we did before, but we know that Hikaru wants to. So Aqua not only stabbing himself and then jumping off the cliff, this is a great chapter. Now, the good thing about this chapter is we do not have to wait another whole week for a new chapter, or we have to wait a whole week. We don't have to wait 2 weeks. That's what I was trying to say. Because we get another chapter on the 2nd of October of 2024, as that is the first chapter of Oshi no Ko for October, and it is a week away from today. So I am so happy to see this, that we don't have to wait super long for Oshi no Ko, because honestly, that wait from last week where Aqua holds the knife to Hikaru, that was an excruciating 2-week wait, all things considered. Now, getting into that sort of general theory crafting here, what is going to happen next time in Oshi no Ko? And also, with that, how long does Oshi no Ko have left? So before going into this chapter, I thought that Aqua and Hikaru were going to have a little bit of a longer fallout with the whole thing, and that this series would probably go on for another 10 chapters. Because for those of you who don't know, Oshi no Ko's tankobons, or the volumes, are each collect 10 chapters of the manga, besides for the one case where the one collected 14, including the interlude chapters, which pretty much made it, all things considered, about 13 chapters or 11 chapters in that volume instead of the regular 10. So what is going to happen here? I think that we probably have less than 10 chapters. That was my initial prediction, because I think, all right, 161, and we'll have 9 chapters following this round out of the volume. I honestly have no idea. Now, I could see a few angles of this, like, all right, Hikaru is obviously probably going to die here, or if he doesn't die by tumbling off this cliff, he is probably going to not have a good life for the rest of his days. And Aqua has stabbed himself. Aqua will almost assuredly die because of what's happened here. But as we know in Oshi no Ko, there's this idea of reincarnation. And of course, that is what happened to Goru and Serena after they helped the crow of Tsukuyomi in the past. And Tsukuyomi pretty much granted them the whole ideas of like, hey, I will let you live another life. And because of all of this that's happened and this tragic tale, I can see a world where I'm pretty sure a lot of the fan base will think this is a massive cop-out in the end of, yeah, Aqua killed himself, so, like, there's no reason that he should be coming back. I think there's a very good chance that Krogirl could come back and say, hey, Aqua, I am going to pretty much revive you into a new body. Maybe, he'll be, like, the child of another person, or maybe he'll just, like, simply be like a child of like Akane or Kana or some of the people that he has definitely loved in the past, and get to spend his days with them again in a different way than how he was able to do it now. I could see that being a twist. Like I said, I think a lot of fans would think that'd be a cop-out, but I think that is a very real direction this series could go. As for what's going to happen next chapter, I have no idea. I honestly think there could be a massive like shift as like we open up on like a newscaster or something, as they're like explaining the situation that happened here on the beach, and like seeing all this reporting going on and just getting the reactions of all of our characters that we know and care about. We get the reactions of Kana, and maybe this interferes with the performance of the Galaric Sparkle thing, for example. There's truly like a lot of different ways the next chapter could go, and I'm really not sure about any single one of them. But with that, this was an amazing chapter of Oshi no Ko. I think I've really gone through all of my thoughts on it. I don't think this video is going to end up as long as the last one, but I also think your last one was a lot more like, hey, here's all of the things sort of going on with this chapter. Is a little bit more action-oriented in a sense, or oriented. I don't know why I said oriented or whatever. I said whatever. Again, I didn't really like the whole Krogirl part because that whole line of, if so, perhaps the scene was preordained from the beginning. We already knew it was, so I guess there's merit to that, but I just don't like that wording really at all. But with that, thank you guys so very much for watching this Oshi no Ko video today. Of course, I've got plenty of other Oshi no Ko videos on the channel, so if you like this one, maybe you won't consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video down below. There's a bunch of stuff. But also, if you don't think I've deserved your subscription yet, maybe you go check out some of my other videos and be like, oh yeah, this guy's actually pretty cool. I also do plenty of other content on the channel, like I mentioned a second ago. I do plenty of other Oshi no Ko reviews. I've talked about this series now for 50 chapters, I think this chapter is probably number 52 of the actual chapters, and then all the interlude and small other chapters. So I've talked about Oshi no Ko plenty, to where I've talked about this series for almost a whole third of its entire run, which is absolutely insane to think about at a certain point. And with that, yeah, I also do plenty of our content on the channel, talk about other manga and anime series. In manga-wise, talked about like World Trigger, Kagurabachi, and Navigatora. And then in the anime landscape, I don't actually talk about the Oshi no Ko anime because I already just talked about the manga. I don't need to talk about it twice. But I talked about series like Hell's Paradise, Kujugo Karaku, Go-Go Loser Ranger, Bleach, Chainsaw Man, and a bunch of other series I've done on the channel previously. And also, I do have a little bit of other content you'll probably see in a few days after posting this video. I'm doing a card game opening up some of the new Digimon card game set. Hey, Digimon is an anime series that's sort of anime adjacent. I'm going to count it for the purposes of this being an anime and manga channel, alright? Hey, I've talked about a few video games too, and the new Legend of Zelda game coming out here in a few days, which I think it actually comes out tomorrow. Holy crap. Oshi no Ko is probably better than that game is going to be, but that game is going to be absolutely amazing. I'm going to tell you right now. I may do a few things with that, and I think that's roughly like Japan, manga, anime, Nintendo. I think it all comes together in the end, but with that, thank you so very much for watching this video again. Again, this was chapter number 161 of Oshi no Ko. I always forget to mention this at the beginning of the video, but I always mention it at the end of the video. This chapter did have the little star icon where the chapter title was written in. This time it was white, not black or anything, so hey, I guess that means this series is like looking up to the light or whatever. But with that, I will see you guys next time for chapter number 162 of Oshi no Ko. Again, this was chapter number 161, titled Futures. An absolutely amazing chapter, and it may be another long week to wait to find out what happens next time on Oshi no Ko. Thank you guys so very much for watching again, and I will catch you guys next time. This has been Glowplasma 231, signing out.